I'm Amy Medling from PCOS Diva, and I often get emails and questions about how you can make your favorite dish PCOS friendly. So I thought today I would take one of the classic carb-laden dishes, spaghetti and meatballs, and teach you how to make it really delicious and nourishing and satisfying and PCOS friendly. So if you ever have had one of those experiences of spaghetti and meatballs and they just kind of sit like a rock in your stomach, you are going to be really happy. This is going to make you energized, and you're going to really feel good after eating it. So it starts with the spaghetti. So you have a couple options. You can, of course, buy a gluten-free spaghetti like a quinoa or brown rice, but I like to kind of step it up a notch. I'm always looking at how I can make my dishes even more nutritious. So spaghetti squash, this is really a yummy way to make your spaghetti. My whole family eats it. My kids love it. My 4-year-old asks for more spaghetti squash. So try it. This is what they look like. It's kind of a round, you can hear my oven's preheating in the background. You can find it at your grocery store in the produce section. It's kind of a oblong squash, sort of a bright yellow, and it's so easy to make. So all you're going to do is, I usually just trim off the ends, and cut it in half, and just put it in my oven. I have it preheating at 375. This is a good sharp knife. I use it pretty much every single day cooking my dinners. So you get the squash cut, and you'll see it's just like a pumpkin. There's seeds inside, so you want to scrape out those seeds. And you'll start to see the spaghetti strands. Okay, now that I've gotten the squash cleaned out, all you have to do is put it in a pan. I have just a broiling pan here. But the key to it is to put some water in the bottom of the broiling pan. So, I don't know, I got about a cup of water. And then what I do is I just poke some holes with my knife into the squash, just to kind of let some of that steam out. And then you just pop it in the oven for about, I don't know, chuck it at 30 minutes. You don't want the squash too overcooked, because then it gets kind of too mushy. So now I'm just going to pop it in the oven while we make the meatballs. Okay, so now we're on to the meatballs. And you can choose to use a grass-fed organic beef, ground beef, or I'm using turkey for these meatballs. I bought a pound of all-natural, the ground turkey, not just the turkey breast. And we'll add a cup, it's about a medium onion, a cup of onion finely diced. And then I love shallots. If you have my meal plans, you'll notice a lot of shallots. Shallots are kind of a cross between an onion and a garlic, and they just add such nice flavor and a lot of nutrition too. So I just chopped up a shallot as well. And then I have 3 cloves of garlic, and you really want to use fresh garlic. Don't use the jarred stuff. And you want to invest in one of these really great handy-dandy garlic presses. They're really cheap. You can get it at Walmart, Target. So I'm just going to put those 3 garlic cloves in here. And then I already made my spice mix. I used about a teaspoon of, half a teaspoon to a teaspoon, depending on how much you like oregano, a teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of sea salt. And it's really important that you switch out regular table salt for sea salt. And I like pink Himalayan sea salt. I know I've written about it on my blog and I talk about it on Facebook. So use the sea salt and then about a half a teaspoon of ground pepper. And I'm just going to put that in. And I would also put in a half a cup of chopped parsley, but I just checked my fridge and I didn't have any. So I would be adding that parsley in there as well. And then 2 eggs. slightly beaten. And then this is really the key ingredient. Instead of breadcrumbs, which have gluten in them, and as a woman with PCOS, I strongly believe that we should be gluten-free, and you can read more about that on my site. But instead of using the breadcrumbs, I actually use oats, and oats inherently are gluten-free. The problem lies in where they're grown. Oftentimes they're grown in fields that previously grew wheat, and sometimes they're contaminated in processing. So if you're celiac and you cannot have any gluten, definitely go for the gluten-free oats, and Bob's Red Mill sells them. But if you, like me, I can tolerate the regular oats that aren't gluten-free, so feel free to use them if you feel like you can tolerate them. So what you want to do is you want to create kind of an oat flour, and I do that with my blender. And I invested, it was probably one of the best kitchen tools I've ever spent the money on. It was about $350, so it's spendy, but I use it multiple times every day. It's a Vitamix blender, and it pulverized this oatmeal in seconds. I would have showed you, but it's just very loud, so I didn't. But I make all my smoothies in it. It pulverizes vegetables. You can make nut butters. It's a great, great tool in your PCOS kitchen. So about a cup of the oats that have been made into kind of a coarse oat flour. So I'm going to add that. And then we'll just mix them up. Okay, so when you're making meatballs, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. You kind of have to do that to get all of the ingredients combined. And then, of course, to roll your meatballs. Okay, so I added about 1/4 cup of water to the mixture to make it just not so dense. And then what I did is I took a cookie sheet and I lined it with foil, and then I just put a cookie rack on it so that the fat would drip down and drain down, so your meatballs aren't sitting in fat. And they would look a little prettier if there was some parsley, but you just want to roll them to, I don't know, about an inch and a half. You know, I also make kind of like an Italian wedding soup using these meatballs, and in that case you want to make tinier meatballs, but for the spaghetti and meatballs, I don't know, I think about an inch and a half are good. So I ended up getting about 18 meatballs out of that pound of turkey, and I'm going to throw them in the oven for, I'll keep them at 375. I'll cook them for about 30 minutes, I'll check, and they might need another 5 minutes. And oftentimes I'll rotate them, kind of roll them in halfway between so it gives all sides a chance to brown. But now I want to talk to you about the sauce. And being a busy mom of 3 kids, I don't have a lot of time to make sauce from scratch, so I actually use jarred sauce. And way back in the day I loved Prego, but Prego is filled with sugar and a lot of other ingredients that you really don't want to be eating, high fructose corn syrup. And so you really want to find a jar sauce that is all natural, that only has a few ingredients, and I find that it's really worthwhile to pay a little extra for like the boutique sauces. This sauce is actually from a local restaurant that's near me, and they sell it in the local grocery stores. And if I look at the label, the only ingredients are tomatoes, tomato puree, sea salt, extra virgin olive oil, fresh garlic. Sugar is one of the last ingredients. There's only 5 grams of sugar in this sauce, and this is actually a pretty low sugar sauce. And then spices, and you know, it just looks fresh when you look at the jar. So I start with a sauce like this as a base, and again, I'm always looking for ways to upgrade the nutrition. So what I'll probably do is add some onions and some green peppers and some more garlic, because I love garlic, and garlic is so good for you. And I might add a can of organic tomatoes. I really like Muir Glen. The tomato cans do not have BPA in their liners, so that's a really nice brand to look for. So I'll throw in a can of Glen diced tomatoes, and then I usually will put in some kale or spinach at the very end to just let it wilt and add that to the sauce, again trying to upgrade the dish for more nutrition. Of course, kale is one of the best things we can eat. So I will show you what the final dish looks like in just a little bit. Okay, so the squash is now finished cooking, and you really want it to just be fork tender so the fork just easily pokes through. You don't want to get it too mushy or it's just not going to work right. So what you're going to do is you're going to just take a fork and just scrape the squash, and you'll see it's like spaghetti strands. Okay, so once we get all of the squash out of the shell, you can see we have lots of spaghetti strands here. I like to add a little olive oil, just about a tablespoon of olive oil, and then I like to use a little freshly ground black pepper, and then a little of the salt. I get these little salt and pepper shakers at Trader Joe's. They're great. So then we just mix it up, and then it's ready for the spaghetti sauce. And I use this, and you'll see spaghetti squash in a lot of my meal plans for chicken piccata or shrimp scampi, and it really just makes a nice substitute for pasta. But because it is a winter squash and it's starchier, you really want to keep your serving size to about a half a cup. So I have my sauce simmering here on the stove. I just took a little bit of olive oil and sauteed some onion, about a half a cup, and half a green pepper, a couple more garlic cloves, and then I added the jarred sauce that I showed you, a can of diced tomatoes, and just a small can of tomato sauce, organic tomato sauce. And then I added the cooked meatballs, and I'm just letting them simmer so all the flavors will kind of blend. And then right before serving, I add, I don't know, about 2 cups full of baby greens. So I have baby kale here and baby spinach, and you just want to add that, and they'll wilt very, very quickly. But again, it just adds some extra boost of nutrition and just makes it look pretty. Okay, so now to plate it up for dinner. I will use about a half a cup of the spaghetti squash per serving, and then top it with the sauce. I don't know, about 2 meatballs or so, and plenty of the sauce. And then I just wanted to speak to you a moment about cheese. I know many of you probably top your spaghetti with a nice heaping mound of cheese. I really want you to rethink the cheese. If you've read PCOS Diva site at all, you know that I'm not a big fan of dairy. I want you to start thinking of cheese if you're going to have it as a garnish. So a little fresh Parmesan, that's fine. A little sprinkling to give it some flavor. I find that fresh herbs on top of pasta just make it really extra special. So fresh basil, fresh parsley, it really adds a nice touch, and then you can just enjoy. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video of how to make spaghetti and meatballs more PCOS friendly.